Well, yeah. Let's get into that. All right, let's get into that. So ProPublica put an article out. I'm going to pull that article up in a second. I just got to preface this with there were definitely like the main CRT team in the city did come at myself and Eric. They said some stupid things on us, but we don't. And that was the thing that we said. Like, I can't believe how emboldened cops are. They're using their own name, their own photos, and ridiculous things. Calling me a rat because I worked in IAB. Saying our wives are old and ugly. Just nonsensical thing. And we kind of left it alone. We weren't going to do anything, but it was just the fact that they felt emboldened enough to do it. A captain with his lieutenants and his sergeants and some rookies. And so, like, we never faulted them. We were like, they're being put up to this by Kaz Daughtry and John Schell and Jeffrey Madry. Like, we never thought it was them. So then when they took it up a notch and decided to get underworld criminals to threaten us and then have members of the service threaten our children, then we were like, you know what? We're going to go backwards and we're going to paint this picture of actually what happens. We're going to paint this timeline of actually what happened. And in that timeline is the Khaki Pants crew, that main crew that was the originally started, the citywide unit. And we gave that to Internal Affairs. And now what we're seeing is that, like, they're the only ones being held accountable for that action. IAB is completely just disregarding the fact that the police commissioner, chief of department, chief of patrol, deputy commissioner of operations were directly involved in misusing police resources and sending them there. They only felt implored to come and do those things online because they had the backing of the mayor and everyone else. I mean, when you go through those emails and when you go through those messages online, what was the common theme on there? Get stuff done. Get stuff done. Get stuff done. Because that was coming from the mayor, the police commissioner, the chief of department. It had nothing to do with anything because to that point, I mean, we never said anything about CRT. We didn't like the way that they had their own uniforms. But so basically what you saw is they were a very secretive unit. And not only were they a secretive unit, but the rules did not apply to them. Because you would never see members of social media, especially in a coordinated effort, a captain, lieutenants, sergeants, detectives, cops, in a coordinated effort, all coming in and doing something, violating the NYPD's social media policy, threatening people, smearing people with lies, divulging confidential information on people. You would never see that historically. So I was like, me and Eric were like blown away. We were like laughing about it when it first happened. I'm like, well, obviously they know they're not getting in trouble. Obviously they're being told to do this. And so they're not worried about it. So I think that's so before we even get into that, I think that's something that we have to note is that, like, this, like, while not everybody in CRT's a bad dude, I don't even think any of them are really bad guys. I blame, again, the leadership. I blame what happens when you take influential young cops and you tell them this is what you need to do. And because you do this, we're going to heavily reward you. You're going to get detective shields when you have 10 arrests. You're going to be a second grade detective by the time you had 5 years on. You're going to be able to play Call of Duty 4 hours a day at work. You're going to be able to work out 2 hours a day at work, and we're going to go out and play. And basically, that's what happens. Like, you're molding terrible cops, and that's what you're going to read today. It's not that they're bad people. It's that they were molded by bad people. They were molded by people to use them as if they were their hitmen, basically.
Like it's a John Schell trait, though. That's what he does. He molds you into this whole thing, and then the minute something goes wrong, he's the first one to back away from you. It's his MO in his career. Ask anyone who really knows the guy. He's done that his whole career, And it's funny that you mentioned these things, and we're talking. I mean, Eric Dim was very critical of how they deployed these cops, what they were doing as far as vehicle pursuits and all of that. And then they came with furor at you and Eric and it got to the point that they got to the mob associate threatening you, and people just kind of like, and then some of the other cops, rat, this, that, and you're forgetting we're no longer police officers. You can't just contact people acting like we're your buddies or we work with you, or we're not that. So when things like this happen, it's actually you're in a criminal aspect, acting like a bunch of criminals, actually. So at that point, they needed to pull these guys away and say, stop with this social media stuff. But, a friend of ours, Dominic Izzo, some people like him and don't like him. I liked, he's my buddy. I have no problem with him, but he posts something on Instagram all the time, and he has his own show, Cop Talk, on YouTube. And he always posts these cops that are on TikTok, and they make a complete embarrassment of themselves, right? And that seems to be the theme, and embarrass the uniform. That seems to be the theme of a lot of these people in the New York City Police Department right now under Eric Adams, especially upper echelon, who want to be self-impressed and just can't step away from the camera. At some points, they want to act like they're a gangster, but they have a badge. Other parts, they want to act like they're movie stars, but they still have a badge. So that seems to be the underlining theme of what you're seeing here. And then with CRT in itself, look, I was a hardworking cop. Maybe if I was on the job maybe 10 years ago, or, I would be somebody that would say, hey, you want to come work for this unit? Or other guys like, Marlon or John or Eric, you could have been in this unit. But then, not singling people out. You have a lieutenant that stomped on someone's head. And not only does he got transferred, he was modified very shortly, making overtime while he's modified. Meanwhile, they're picking on some guy that I think dozed off for a second, and if the prisoner left him or something, they're going to look to destroy this guy. And then you have the leader of the CRT. Either he's dozing off or he's inattentive while he's at a committee meeting, and nothing's going to happen about that. Because, by the way, your fingers twitch when you sleep. So I don't know what the guy was doing, but that's the chief of the department. That's an embarrassment. But, hey, CRT, they could do whatever they want. So that seems to be the recurring theme. So when you go off of this now, just remember these themes that we're trying to tell you how we start off, because there's a little bit of background with what's going on overall with the grand scheme of things.
So what are your thoughts on CRT, Marlon? Marlon, Mike.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we spoke about this before, about putting young, inexperienced cops in positions that they aren't ready for. And this is once again is just telling you that what we said was what was not only what was happening, but we were right. Me and Sal also spoke about this in one of the episodes, about how the role of supervisors is to watch over the scene and kind of prevent your cops from going too far, or preventing the incident from going sideways. Now, the reason why I'm noting that again is because, in a lot of ways, the department is using inexperienced cops to be over aggressive for political expedience. Adams believes in getting stuff done quickly and not necessarily via following the law, via following the rules. And this is a problem because, like I said, supervisors, your job is to make sure things don't go sideways, and to make sure, the cops do their job, but they're kind of doing it within. They're not crossing that line, of the rules. So when you see incidents where CRT supervisors themselves are getting involved in these incidents and kicking people and stepping on their heads, it just makes you shake your head, because the extent to which the rules didn't apply to CRT, and how CRT was kind of to me, CRT was like Adams and the higher ups own police department within the police department, and instead of, because the regular police department is so handcuffed, right, that they need to create their own department in order to get things done politically get things done expediently. And and in a lot of ways, the problems that we're seeing here are because of that. And this is something you should all pay attention to this, because this is something that's going to come up again even after Adams is not dead. Because what's going to happen to those officers who are involved in those incidents? Well, they're going to be hung out to dry. So this is something to keep your eyes on.
Yeah, I mean, so, you take guys that come on the job, and, nobody comes on this job. Very few people come on this job with nefarious intentions. Very few people come on this job like Eric Adams came on this job with a goal, a political goal, right? He didn't come on this job like 99.9% of us, where we're like, I'm going to learn the job. I'm going to be a cop. No, he had pointed intentions of why he was going to become a cop. He was going to use it as a political stand, take political stand to put his name out there in the public, and to garner attention against himself, and then go into the political world and capture New York City. And he did it. So it's an amazing story. I like the backstory on it. I'm not going to lie. I think it's an amazing story when you look at it. But he had those intentions. And I think what happens in policing is most people don't have those intentions. You come on the job, you're young, you want to do the right thing, you want to learn the job, it's a career, it's something that's exciting, it's fun. You're part of this team, you're part of this organization, this storied organization, and it could go bad on you quickly. If you're not a person of strong moral character, if you can't think outside the box and think about what you're being told, it could go bad on you. And unfortunately, when you're sitting there and you're hanging out with the mayor, and you're hanging out with the chief of department, and you're hanging out with all of the upper echelon of the job, you're jaded. So if they told you something that's not right, and it's not legal, and it violates all the rules, you're probably not going to think it's illegal. You're probably not going to think it violates the rules. You're going to say, oh, no. This is what I'm being told. No, it's okay. This is what we do. We beat up people in handcuffs. No, we step on people's heads when they don't talk. You're not even thinking at that point, because you're with the entire power structure of New York City.
It's lit movie.
Go out smoking.
I don't fault any young kid that came on this job and was groomed by them and is completely heavy-handed. I fault the job. I don't fault anyone who goes out there on the streets of New York now and acts like a thug that's next to these thugs that are running the New York City Police Department in New York City. How could you fault them? We laud these people every day. They're at all these awards dinners. They're at prayer breakfasts receiving awards. They're getting blessed by all the highest clergy in New York City. I'm like, how could I fault a young guy that comes on the job? I was an idiot when I came on the job. I think we all were. I mean, anyone that says that they were, unless you came on the job older, I mean, your brain isn't fully developed. I mean, come on. I was a moron. I mean, so were we all. And now I get groomed into this system where I'm, being lauded everywhere I go. I'm doing the right thing. What do they call it? There's something that it's called righteous corruption. It's a right for me. It's a right for me to violate the law. It's a right for me to do all these things because I'm doing it for the right reasons. I'm fighting the demons. I'm fighting the devils. It's a right for me to break the law. It's a right for me to do this. And unfortunately, I think Eric Adams, which is amazing to me because it just shows you what a lack of integrity is. He's the guy who fought against heavy-handed policing his entire career when it wasn't heavy-handed policing. He exaggerated everything that happened with the police department to give himself a name. And then you watch him create this unit that's way worse than anything that he ever rallied against. And you're like, it's amazing to me, man. And I'm going to go back to Lieutenant Eric Adams. The buck stops with him. The buck stops with him. He's the mayor. The buck ultimately stops with the mayor. And for some reason, now that he's the mayor, the buck no longer stops with him. So Lieutenant Eric Adams wouldn't like Mayor Eric Adams. Captain Eric Adams wouldn't like Mayor Eric Adams. They would actually hate him because he's much worse than everyone that he railed against to get his name up, to put himself on this political stage. So when we go through this article, I just want you to note, like, again, to quote Eric Dim, police are the most tangible form of government. So when we're reading this article and we're talking about the CRT, you got to say, oh, wow, these guys are messed up. This is horrible. How'd this happen? How'd that happen? No, it's not these guys that messed up. It's that they're the arm of government and they're following orders and doing what they're told to do by the people that you should truly be mad at. Not saying, oh, we need him in office. Like, no, we don't. If you need Eric Adams, forget about it. You might as well forget about it. It's over. You're not going to survive. You're not going to survive in the next 2 hours. If you need Eric Adams to keep you safe, if you need Eric Adams to keep you financially healthy, if you need Eric Adams for literally anything in life, like, hey, I need you to get that piece of paper off the fax machine right there. If you need him to just do that, you're not going to survive. It's not happening. He's not competent enough to even do that, follow that instruction. We just need you to go over the fax machine every hour and take the paper off. Not competent enough.
Yeah, but you got to remember, you heard a little bit yesterday from Eric Sanders, and I tell people to watch that documentary about the Supreme Team. And Eric Adams came from that, 7 crowns and all that stuff. That's his true nature, where he comes from. So everything you see is like being a charlatan. And what you're saying, Lieutenant and Captain and Sergeant Eric Adams, he had Louis Farrakhan, Al Sharpton. He was coming heavy against the NYPD and Rudy Giuliani, who became the mayor at that time. And he also had Dinkins. So he's always hung around power structures. So he always got his way. But now once he's the mayor and he is the top guy, he's seeing that it's not the way other people, the way he was when he was up against the police department. So you got to factor that all in, because you're right. If he was who he was back on the job against Mayor Eric Adams, it would have been a completely – but does he have the support of those people, or are those people supporting the mayor, who would be him? Because that would be – it's a good what-if situation. And I say I'm pretty sure if he was a cop, with all a heavy-handed approach that John Shell and company have had with CRT and everyone, and they don't care what career to destroy. Remember, if you're a cop and you did something and it's destroyed your career, they'll back away from you and act like they never knew you. So if you go on that logic, Captain Eric Adams at that time would have been screaming about this. But then as the mayor, it's like, who's backing who? Because he's got the same kind of power structure. It's fading now because he's so corrupt. But before all of this, they were right behind him. They had no problem with him, and they would have said this is okay. That seemed to be a problem. Shout out to Rich Roge. Says good morning, everyone. He has coffee and espresso or cappuccino this morning. Put $20 in our coffers. Thanks a lot, Rich Roge.
Yeah. That just shows you how much of what Eric Adams did before he became mayor was just political gamesmanship. I mean, you before he became mayor, you helped handcuff the police, and help remove measures that were within the Constitution, like stop and frisk. And as mayor, you initiate something like the CRT, which is your own secret police that are allowed to break the law. John is absolutely spot on with what he's saying, that Eric Adams came on like he had the targeted goal of becoming a politician, because what he did before he became mayor doesn't align with what he has become as mayor politically. It's all gamesmanship that was meant to help further his career to where it is now.
100%. And shout out to Arbad. Arbad says, good morning, all. Eric and Derek and family. The formerly world-renowned NYPD is sadly looking like organized crime than law enforcement under Grifter Adams. Much has been bravely exposed by this podcast and the entire channel. Crumbs and bums. I mean, I don't even think that we've exposed it. I think it's really just out there in the open, and people are just turning a blind eye to it.
Wait, John, wait a minute. No, that's not true. When they go,
true, dude, they're right there. It's right
when
out
the
in
press,
open.
the press is sitting there like this Tuesday, and instead of asking pertinent questions, they're asking about Trump and immigration. They've said the same thing for the last 10, 12 weeks in a row. People need to know about things. He's the mayor, and they don't ask it. All we're doing here, and especially you and Eric, you put out what you know. It's predominantly, it is true. It's coming right from sources inside this mess of an administration, and they kind of gloss over it and go back to, well, Trump is in office and Trump. That's all you ever hear about, man. And that's why you're hearing people getting swatted at their house. The media's got to stop. You're focusing on the wrong things. Trump is the president, I understand, but he's a small little blip on the map compared to the entire country. There's so many other issues, and the president is not going to solve 100% of the things, but they're obsessed, and then they ask Eric Adams, and they stay away from the issues. And what you do is you put a spotlight on it. So people who do pay attention, they applaud that. And, of course, the haters don't, but we're going to pay attention to that. But you are important. That's what's important, because the media sure isn't doing their job. I'm sorry. I saw that press conference. They don't even ask any. They could have asked about Epps' interview. Hey, here's a good question. Hey, Eric Adams, what do you know about that? Do you know that woman directly? Because I asked Eric Sanders, and he kind of left it where, well, you're going to see. But ask Eric Adams that, because if he's directly involved, you got an even bigger problem than you thought originally. But, again, John, I think you and Eric do a great job at that. You've been doing it for a while, whereas the media, every now and then they throw a bone, they ask a question that makes sense, and then they go back to sleep and ask about Trump. It's really, I don't know what this. That's why you have all these problems.
I'm gonna have to agree with Sal too.
So, but listen, here's the thing. I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna push back, and I'm gonna say we're not exposing anything. In times of great deceit, truth telling's a revolutionary act.
True.
So what we're doing is, we wake up in the morning and you get slapped in the face with what's happening. You put on your media, you could put on the left, you could put on the right, and nobody's talking about what you see, right? And because no one's talking, you're like, wait, what time out? What's going on? Oh, Tom Holman's chewing an apple while protesters are yelling at him? Yeah, Tom, why don't you answer why we just signed a $981 million contract in the New York City Hotel Owners Association to house illegal immigrants? Why don't you talk about that? Why did we just renew that under the Trump administration when you're done taking bites from your apple? Why don't you explain that to us, Tom? Why don't you explain to us why that has a 3-year renewal option through the entire Trump presidency? How exactly is Eric Adams helping you get rid of public safety threats, Tom? Could you explain that to us when you're done taking your bites? Like, when you wake up in the morning and you see this, am I really exposing anything? Are you really exposing anything? You're right. Maybe we're putting a spotlight on it. But what we're doing is we're truth-telling during a time of great deceit. And we are living in a time of great deceit. And a lot of people refuse to recognize this. A lot of people refuse to recognize that every day they wake up, they put a blinder on, and they don't want to acknowledge what happened. Every day. So once a week, I like to, and I'm sorry, Marlon, but like once a week, it brings me great joy to go on Al Sharpton and Eric Adams' tweets when they're talking specifically about empowering Black communities. And I'm like, oh, yeah, could you explain to me why a Black man, Marlon Bethel, was fired for absolutely nothing, received zero due process, received zero civil rights, was terminated when cops who rape people and rob people are afforded all of those? Could you explain that to me, how you're helping Black people? Could you? And I do that, and people are like, you're crazy. I'm like, I'm crazy? I'm like, this is how I grew up. I grew up around men that told you what they thought, even if it was horrible. And you're like, oh my God, I can't. This guy has no filter. Like, I grew up around men, and I don't see a lot of men. I see a lot of guys I'm sitting on this channel with. I see a lot of people in the chat that are men. I mean, but like, I see people that'll put their head down and do absolutely anything for a paycheck, for 8%, for 2%, for a pension, absolutely anything. You know, like, I consistently get a hater who's probably the highest ranking person in the department who sends me messages like, your pension's terrible. It's like, okay, but I sleep very well at night. My pension might be terrible, but I sleep very well at night. And there is a huge amount of money that I am willing to give up in this world to not sit there and be like, you know what? When I put my head on the bed for the last time, when I go up and I'm going to say, you know what? I did everything that I could do. There's nothing else I could have did. So I don't think what we're doing is like, I don't think what we're doing is exposing anything. I think it's right out there in the open, and people just don't want to tell the truth anymore. And people just want to live lies and not talk about any of this shit. So I think that we're living in a time of great deceit. And we just happen to have balls enough to say, that's what I think. Whether I'm right or wrong, and whether you're right or wrong, this is what I think about that. And it's completely revolutionary.
Yeah, but it takes courage too. You have courage to speak, and others didn't. You know, Marlon, Marlon had the courage he exposed the whole list of people, overtime earners. Other people would have been, oh, you can't do that. You're a rat or whatever. But Marlon did it, right? I'm telling you, you need people that have courage to step forward. I'm sure right now, John, that there's black officers that are being destroyed in the NYPD that are afraid to speak. It's not having that courage for whatever reason, because I know what it's like to be on that job. It's almost like being oppressed on top. So they can't speak about the actions that are going on and what happens to them personally. But that's a common trend in the New York City Police Department. Because like you said, you got that one individual who is probably messaging you and he's so worried about you and he's the highest ranking person. He should worry about that sleep apnea. That's what I think. Marlon, you take it away.
Yeah. So I think the way to think about this is that we are the fifth estate, you know. So the fourth estate, which is how the media, the official media, and the press are seen as basically the unofficial fourth branch of the government, which basically keeps watch over the executive, judicial, and legislative branch, right? We're the fifth estate, you know. We're the citizen media, the citizen journalists who keeps an eye, who kind of puts the spotlight where the official media should go to, and in a lot of ways, I think a lot of these stories wouldn't come out without you guys, because the thing is, the official fourth estate has become so ingrained into the establishment that they're afraid to go there. They're afraid to go to a lot of these topics because, you know, they first of all, they don't know as much about policing or the internal minutia of policing like we do, because they were never cops. They were never part of the NYPD. So there's a lot they don't know. And then because they're so ingrained into the system, into the establishment, there's a lot that they don't want talked about. They're afraid to go there, you know? And I think without you guys pointing the spotlight there, a lot of these topics would have never come out. They would have never gone there because of what I said. So the way to look at it is we're the fifth estate, where the other branch, the other unofficial branch, the citizens who are keeping watch and pointing the spotlight so that the fourth estate can go there. So, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, John, in that extent. And I think that's something that we should all think about as citizens, and YouTube chat, because we're just regular people like you. We don't have, you know, we're not working for some multi-million-dollar corporation, you know, and we have no. We're not ingrained in the establishment. We're not part of the establishment. We're just regular citizens who want a better government, who want a better police department, and who want a better country, and just we're just tired of the way things gone, and are now speaking out and pointing that spotlight at things that we need to talk about to get there.
Okay, listen, I agree, and that's all I'm getting at is like, we're all being coerced into staying silent and being afraid to speak our minds, and I'm just not buying into it. I haven't been buying into it. They never got me on the whole racism thing. I'm like, you're not going to tell me I'm a racist. I don't care. Call me a racist all you like. I'm never apologizing to you. I'll double down on it. I could care less. You're never getting me. When I forget what I did. I tweeted something about when Eric Adams said that we could reapply. I wrote in like Mark Twain. I was like, okay, Massa, should I come and be a good boy? And I got about 50 calls that day from people I love. They're like, John, take that down. Take that down. You're doing so good. I was like, absolutely not. He is treating us like we're slaves. I am not reapplying. And maybe I have to wave away my rights and reapply. And after I waved away my rights, they could still tell me, we're not taking you back. I'm like, I'm absolutely not taking that down. Tell me whatever you like. Do whatever you like. Post that everywhere. I could care less. I'm not apologizing. This is how I'm being treated. This is how I feel I'm being treated. And I'm telling you, so many people kind of came out of the woodworks that day to be like, John, take that down. You're doing so good. Stop. Take that down. I was like, I am not taking that down. I am not a racist. You could call me whatever you like. I could care less. It's not coming down. And so, we're all afraid to speak. Oh, I can't say anything about Eric Adams being a street dog because they'll call me a racist. I can't say that Eric Adams is incompetent, which he clearly is. And I'm talking on every facet of his work because, you're a racist. You can't say that Eric Adams took all of his incompetent, corrupt friends and put them in high positions because then you're a racist. You can't say that Kaz Daughtry can't be in that position or shouldn't be in that position because you're a racist. And that's what happened. And we're all sitting here and we're all buying into it. And as society, the Overton window's shifting, they're literally controlling your language. Because you can't say what you think. Because if you say what you think, guess what? You're a racist. It's like, oh, really? I'm a racist because I'm telling the truth? And I think it was Solzhenitsyn that said, it was Solzhenitsyn. He said, one man telling the truth can take down an entire tyranny, right? Because now there's young generations that don't even know what telling the truth is. They're self-censoring before they're like, and they can't even think. So when they hear someone doing it, they're like, oh my God, this is crazy. Oh yeah, wait, why is that guy a racist? I don't think he's a racist. And so that's kind of what's going on. So let's get into this article. Sorry for the long-winded rant. We got about 700 people on here this morning. Thanks for joining us. We're going to get into what we call the Khaki Pants Cowboys. This is a ProPublica article. I think it came out by Eric Olmansky. And so before we do, I just want to read one thing that Pat Donahue wrote, because this always stood out in my head. The fact that this unit has a separate uniform than the NYPD. It always bothered me. It always bothered me. I'm not going to lie. From the minute I seen it, I was like, I don't like that. If I was the police commissioner, if I was the mayor, that uniform is going back to the uniform. You want to change the uniform? Change it for everybody. I didn't like it when I see it. I still don't like it. I don't like seeing it on TV. We got a video later we're going to show you too as well. Pat Donahue says in the 1930s, a group of young adults were recruited by a fiery rhetoric and promises of rewards. They were even given a special uniform to wear in public. They became golden to do as they please. Wonder where that was. Can't remember. Maybe in Germany in the 1930s this happened. So this article, how Eric Adams has backed a secretive unit ridden with abuses. Reporting highlights mayoral protection. New York City Mayor Eric Adams has embraced a problematic NYPD unit led by longtime allies. NYPD alarms. When department insider raised red flags about the unit, the team's leaders complained to the mayor. And then when the outsiders did it, they threatened, smeared, and defamed them. Adams footage. The relationships between Adams and the unit was so tight that the mayor was given access to a special live stream feed from the team's body-worn cameras. So in the fall of 22, the New York City Police Department began posting videos online to promote one of its latest initiatives, the Community Response Team, an elite unit formed by the city's new mayor, Eric Adams. Question for you guys, right off the bat, Sal. What do you think about having this mayoral protection? Do you remember any units like this in the past? Because I don't.
No. Even if you were in crime, I mean, you could ask Eric Dim. Was the mayor watching him when he was out there and on his? I've never heard of anything like that because he has a lot. He has access to a lot. So if any officer in CRT, if that's true, if they click on the button, that feed goes right to his office. And then does he watch it or someone else watch it? Because as you know, he was partying with the mob associate, or he was at another nightclub, wherever he was at when these guys are working. So I don't even know if he could watch it live. But if that's true, that's troubling because that puts the mayor. See, you're thinking about future litigations, which is what I'm always looking at that angle. He's the one mayor I could remember in the last, I'm in my 40s, my entire lifespan in New York City that says this guy is like intricately involved in the day-to-day operations of the police department. And the mayor's office could be sued for virtually anything and everything the police department does. That right there should be circled, that he's watching these cameras. So that means he knows everything that's going on, and that he's the guy that they refer to, because the other box was saying how if anyone complained, they just ran back to the mayor. So he is running everything. So why is people should be suing him directly? Because he has knowledge of everything. Whereas the mayors of the past would have the police commissioner as a buffer and go, oh, that's my commissioner. They just briefed me. So that is wild, John. I don't know if anyone could comment about the history of the mayor's office at NYPD, at least in the last 40 years. Tell me where a mayor had direct access like this, watching the live feed. Oh, I can't get my way. Cry to him, and he overrides the police commissioner or anyone else. That's insane, John. There's proof of it right here in this article.
Yeah. What about you, Marlon? What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's kind of absurd, because right here is if you want to know why Sewell left, it's right there. The fact that these guys had like a direct line to the mayor, while basically going around the entire rank structure of the NYPD. It's kind of unheard of, and it really tells you who is really running the police department. And the reason why he loves Kaz so much is because Kaz is basically his mouthpiece. He tells Kaz what to do, and Kaz runs the department. But it's kind of like this is all like unheard of, because back in the day under Kelly and under Bratton, you knew who was running the department. You knew who was in charge. And one of the problems we've been saying all along is we don't know who's in charge of the police department. And so there you go right now. There's our answer.
All right, so let's get into this. Within the department, officials were disturbed by what they saw. I threw red flags, said Matthew Pontillo. So Chief Pontillo was a 3-star chief. He was in charge of the department's risk assessment bureau. So former chief who noted what he called constitutional concerns in the footage. What he's saying is they're violating the law. They're acting outside of the law. They're acting outside of the United States Constitution. They're not acting as a constitutional police department, which is insane, right? Because I thought Eric Adams was against policing like that, but I guess he's actually for it. But Pontillo and two former department executives say that when they raised the videos and the officer's conduct with one of the unit's leaders, he pushed back and complained to an unlikely party, the mayor himself. So the people that were leading the CRT was a detective by the name of Kaz Daughtry and a chief by the name of John Schell. So what Pontillo is telling you here is part of risk assessment. What they would do is they would review the body camera videos, right? Which you would expect executives in the police department to do, right? So when you see young rookies led by people who've had horrible careers in the NYPD. I mean, if you look at the lieutenants, not today. I think they've been bringing them in since we highlighted. They've been bringing in better supervision. But if you look at who they brought in originally to run these units, you look at the lieutenants, you look at their careers, you speak to the people they work with, the people that supervise them, the people they supervised. When you look at those individuals, the lieutenants and the sergeants, you're going to be like, yeah, that's a problem. This unit's going to be a big problem. So now when they're looking at the actions of this unit, of these low integrity leaders or whatever you want to call them, that were recruited by John Schell and Detective Kaz Daughtry for their work, which is insane in my opinion, but whatever. So they recruit them, they bring them in to lead young, impressionable, malleable youth. They put them in these little fancy uniforms. So now Chief Pontillo, the Risk Assessment Bureau, is assessing the risk. And he's looking at the body cameras and saying, this isn't right. What the hell is going on here? You know, this is going to be a problem for the agency down the road, whether it be for lawsuits, whether it be for bad press, whether it be for cops being arrested, whether it be for public outcry. He's like, this is a problem. When he raised those red flags, somebody ran to the mayor. Maybe it was the detective who was acting as the police commissioner, or maybe it was the chief who has sleep apnea and woke himself up during a city council hearing the other day. We don't know. What do you think about that, Sal? 3-star chief can't even do his job.
The 3-star chief with tons of experience that was in that unit for a while, I believe. That just shows you what's going on here. I would take Pontillo's word, a fellow Paisan, before I take Kaz Daughtry or anyone else's word. But in this, the way this is set up, as you know, we can go back to things I've posted about this. The CRT unit was created to give John Schell something to do to become a 3-star chief, because he can't get promoted because, as you know, he killed somebody on the job. So the community would never want this guy to be anything. So that's what they did. They created this whole scheme, and this came from Jeffrey Maddrey, because Maddrey was the original guy running this, but it was not designed that way. It was designed for Schell. So the unit is only in existence to gratify this guy and make him into something that he was never meant to be. So it's funny how all of this is going on, and they have more pull than a guy who is a 3-star chief who does it for a living and has kept the NYPD out of many other, bad things that could have happened. And they're overriding them because it's all about them and what's going to happen with them. And the fact that the mayor's even intervening is outrageous. I've never heard a mayor. It was so rare. And in my time, we had Bloomberg. I had Bloomberg and de Blasio, right? And then Eric Adams at the end. Bloomberg and de Blasio, you can say whatever you want about them. I don't remember them if they ever interfered in anything. I was in the 71st precinct. And the only person, the highest ranking person we ever saw there was the actual police commissioner, he was a commanding officer there. But I never saw the mayor walk around. Bloomberg never came to Crown Heights when I was working. So I don't know. I find this is really troubling stuff. But them not listening Pontillo, listening to him, they're not listening to him. That tells you all you need to know. A 3-star chief with all that experience.
Yeah, there's a huge danger in what's happening with the mayor having such direct control over the police department. And I'll just bring up. Remember when Kai Cenat, the social media influencer guy, had that incident in Union Square?
Oh, yes. Yep.
Now, where was Eric Adams during that incident? He if memory serves me, he was in Puerto Rico or the Bahamas, one of those two. But Eric Adams wasn't in the city when that was happening. And one of the things we wondered was who was in charge in that incident, because when a press conference was finally given, Caban wasn't there either. So the danger of this is that you get the police department so accustomed to getting direct hands-on involvement from the mayor that when you have these big incidents, it's like everyone's running around with their head cut off, so to speak. It's like, who's in charge then, And this is one of the reasons why I said, like, back in the day when Kelly and Bratton were there, you knew who was in charge, I once went to a meeting in the Hudson Yards when Bratton was he was an advisor from it. And the one thing about Bratton is that when he spoke, and you knew, he like basically oozed that leadership, You knew this guy was like, even though he was no longer part of the department, he could easily just step in that role again and run the department. And this is a problem now, because we need that type of leadership. This is the largest police department in the country. We have incidents here that go beyond just local crime. We have incidents like 9/11. These incidents are like, go beyond the scope of what you'd think a local police chief would have to deal with. So we need competency in charge, and you can't have the mayor. You can't have a mayor acting as a quasi police commissioner and having such direct control of the police department, because it just acclimates the executives to not making autonomous decisions and not being that Bratton or Kelly when things get out of hand. And that's a problem. That's a very big problem.
I'm like, it's wild to me. It's wild to me that it took 3 years for this article to come out. This should be front cover of the paper almost immediately, because what happened was, if you guys don't remember, Pontillo spoke out about the vehicle pursuits right around the same time that we did, where we were like, this is going to end very badly for these cops. It's going to end very badly for the public. And then there was a reporter in the city, Yoav Gonen, who also, I think he did a great job of breaking down, what NYPD has done historically and how the difference is now when pursuits just jumped 600% under Shell being named chief of patrol almost within weeks. And again, most cops did not want to engage in those pursuits because they know exactly how dangerous it is to pursue vehicles in such a dense environment like New York City. So for you cops out there, if you're in rural areas or you're in less populated areas, you're probably looking at us like 10 heads. Like, what do you mean you're not pursuing them? Yeah, man, you're not going to pursue when you got about 150,000 people in a 4-block radius and there's 3 schools there. Engaging in that pursuit outweighs the risk of engaging in that pursuit. The danger to the public is greatly outweighed by as opposed to that we engage in that and we arrest somebody for having a temporary plate or for smoking marijuana in their vehicle or whatever it is, So, and that's why NYPD policy was only under extreme circumstances would we do that. And basically the way that the policy is written is that only in extreme circumstances would you do that, because the policy is written in a way that it prohibits you from doing so. And so immediately upon John Shell doing this tour, of going out in the media and saying, we're going to do it. We don't care. The days of running on us are over. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. Jeff Madry does a CYA and sends a memo out to the entire department basically saying, follow the patrol guide procedure, even though John Schell was clearly pushing these people to not follow the patrol guide procedure, right? People were reporting that they were being screamed at for calling off pursuits because the danger to the public was too high. And so Pontillo actually wrote a report about it. And guess what happened to Pontillo? he was told you could be a captain again, so get demoted all the way down about 5 ranks, or you could retire. So Pontillo stepped out. He said, I guess this isn't for me. And so shout out to Chief Pontillo. So if Adams was troubled by the unit's actions, he hasn't shown it. Instead, for more than 2 years, the mayor has repeatedly championed the CRT and his allies who run it, even as officials have warned its policing has been too aggressive. In 2023, for example, Pontillo wrote a scathing internal audit after finding some CRT officers were wrongfully stopping New Yorkers and failing to document the incident. Weeks later, the mayor took to Instagram to boost the unit. Turning out with the team is what he wrote, showing a photo of him wearing a wide smile and khaki pants, the CRT's official uniform. The mayor has been so closely connected to the unit, former senior officials said, that at one point he had special access to a live stream of the team's body-worn cameras. The unit effectively reported directly. City Hall recalled a former top NYPD official with direct knowledge who, like others, spoke on the condition of anonymity because of fear of reprisal. If you raised concern, they would go directly to the mayor all the time. It was insanity. And then if you were an outsider like us, they would send criminals to threaten you and send the CRT team to defame and threaten you. So, I mean, that we got to go back to this for 1 second though, because I think the cops, they definitely have Munchausen syndrome and they can't understand it. So we put something out a while ago directly from the body camera manufacturer saying that they could go back 18 hours on your body camera, which means you're always recording. They could access your body camera at any time. And cops were like coming over the top at me. Nah, bro, they can't do that. Nah, bro, they can't do that. I had people from risk management in the body camera unit telling me, nah, bro, we didn't do that. Believe me, I was directly involved in that. I'm like, listen, I don't know what you know or what you don't know. And I believe that what you're telling me is the truth, that you believe is the truth. But I'm telling you, it says it right here. So I don't care what you don't have to come over the top to correct me, because I'm telling you right now that they're watching that body camera all the time. Now, you might be in the body camera unit and you just don't know it. You might have signed the RFP. You might have signed the contract. I don't know. But I'm telling you right now, they could go on your body camera 18 hours back because the manufacturer says it themselves. Right? And what did Propublica just report? Propublica. The mayor had access to the live stream of the team's body-worn cameras. Guess what? Do you think those cameras were on? No. Because time after time, you see this unit out in videos and their cameras aren't on. And the people who supposedly leaders don't have cameras on. And again, people are going to attack us about this. Say, oh, no, bro, they can't go on my body camera. Okay, so now top officials in the department are telling you that they have access to your live stream, even when you don't have the camera on. And the manufacturer tells you that they have the ability to go back 18 hours even when the camera wasn't on. You know, when you put the camera on, it goes back 60 seconds or whatever it is, 30 seconds, whatever it is. So how did it go backwards if it wasn't recording the whole time?
Let me tell you, Dominic,
I guess I'm the bad guy. I'm just spreading misinformation.
Dominic Izzo, he mentioned this I don't know if you watched, he was on my show. His whole lawsuit against Chicago. He didn't work for Chicago PD. It's one of the surrounding suburbs, and it was about the body cameras filming you when you weren't being filmed. So it was filming it. They were having a live feed. He was in the bathroom. They have it, so it actually records when you're not even pressing the button. So you are right. That is a problem. They don't want to tell you that, but it was true. There's been a lawsuit with it. They found it to be correct.
I mean, the manufacturer says it. So like it's it's crazy to me, and like no one believes it. Cops don't believe it. They're like, nah, bro. The union told me. Oh, the union told you. Oh, okay. Okay. Listen, and I gotta say, when it comes to Eric Dim, when it comes to Derek, I got to give a big shout out. SBA, LBA, PBA, all the police units. I got to give it a big shout out. They stepped up. And but again, it doesn't alleviate us from telling the truth. Makes me like you a little better, but it doesn't alleviate the fact that there's big problems in New York City. And in order to fix the problems, we have to identify them. And this is a problem. Marlon, what are your thoughts about that? Mayor having direct access to live stream. Do you believe that they were putting the cameras on, or was he just watching them?
Well, I believe that's a beta test for what they want to happen eventually. Remember, a couple, maybe a year and change ago, there was an article about using AI on body cameras. Now, in order to do that, that data from the body cameras is going to have to feed. It's going to have to be sent back directly to some sort of a server where the AI is going to have to go through that data in real time for it to be able to spit out like say responses, say like reading a license, or to tell you, oh, okay, this guy, we just ran this guy's name in databases and he has a warrant now. So what you're seeing now is a beta test of what they want to happen in the future, where 1PP or the mayor or whoever else has direct real-time access to body cam footage. And also you're seeing that with the drones, because they've explicitly tell us already that 1PP is going to be able to instantly make command decisions in real time from videos from a drone. So you see where this is all kind of part of the a technocratic plan to give City Hall and commanders of 1PP instant access to whatever's going on in the streets. And we noted, I think it was Monday that we talked about how the department would love to just give a traffic agent a gun and shield and tell them you're now a cop, right? I think part of why they want to do that and why they feel why they feel confident that they could actually have a productive and a efficient police department while having people who are undertrained and in some ways possibly underqualified to become cops, is because the plan is with your body camera, your body camera is going to be able to send instant feeds to 1PP and to commanders, and they'll be able to actually make the decision that where somebody who's undertrained and unqualified can't do themselves. So I think this is just part of a larger agenda, and again the whole doing more with less and doing less for cheaper than they're doing now. So it's not none of this is a coincidence to me.
I'm still baffled by how the mayor is sitting there. He's wearing a uniform, going out with them. We have Mike Smith here in the chat. Does you ever remember the mayor tagging along with his group to go, stop people in the street? This guy is a walking liability, Eric Adams. I'm telling you. I don't know how this guy hasn't had like 1 million lawsuits, which is why Corporation Counsel doesn't answer anyone, because there's so many lawsuits. They don't have enough lawyers because technically there's not enough people working. in all the city agencies. They don't like to tell you that, but that's true. So I bet you there's not enough lawyers to cover all the cases they're having. And if he's out there with them and he's directly involved, every lawsuit that comes would directly have Eric Adams at the top, making them all money makers as well. So this guy's a walking liability. He never read the manual on how to be a mayor, I guess.
Well, you know what? Also, Sal, in a lot of ways, he's now being the cop now that he never was as an actor.
Yeah,
You know,
that's so true.
Politicking and planning out his future political career, you know, and basically gaming the political scene. And now that he's at the top, he's like, now it's time for him to try and be a cop, you know. But again, it's being a cop without actually putting in any of the work that you needed to be a cop, you know. So it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting what's happening right now.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. So, all right, let's continue on this article. In a few instances, after getting a call from one of the unit's leaders, the mayor questioned department lawyers who objected to officers' actions, another former official recalled. In one case, the mayor demanded to know the name of the lawyer and asked whether they were stating the law or just their opinions. It's a big point of note because Eric Adams does not know the law, clearly. When you listen to him speak, when he's questioned on it, he has no idea. He doesn't know what the law is, what he says. That's what he thinks. I'm the mayor.
Follow the law.
Now listen to this line, because this is a true line. The CRT leader, Kaz Daughtry was a detective at this time. Remember, he was in CRT. The CRT leader, Kaz Daughtry, then ignored the lawyer's objections, the official said. Daughtry said he always cooperated with department lawyers. So if he did that, I mean, he would have been held ultimately liable, more than likely been brought up on charges, suspended, and ultimately terminated from the New York City Police Department. But again, you see, if you're close to the mayor, the rules of the patrol guide do not apply to you. The dynamic underscores a central irony around policing during the Adams administration. As a former police captain, Adam railed against the injustices of gung-ho policing. But as mayor, he has embraced a unit that perpetuates it. Within the department, Adams' views are clear. Our mayor has given us the mandate to start playing offense out there, one of the CRT's leaders, John Schell, told a local TV station in 2023, months after promotional videos. The CRT has played a central role in carrying out Adams' public safety priorities, from breaking up college campus protests to cracking down on illegal motorcycles and shuttering unlicensed cannabis shops. The fallout for New York has been significant. An officer chasing unlicensed motorcyclists killed a rider after swerving into him, body camera footage shows. A commander punched a driver and kicked him in the head. According to a cell phone video posted on social media, officers stopped a young man without apparent cause, according to the audit, and then when he complained, the supervisor slammed his head into a car window. This is the video. I'm not going to play the video, but up here, this is the video of a driver during a high-speed pursuit in Manhattan. Came out with his hand up. Lieutenant in the unit punched him in his face. And when two cops were on top of him and he was face down on the ground, the lieutenant stepped on his head. The questionable conduct has sometimes extended into bizarre. In November, a CRT officer repeatedly grabbed and squeezed a man's genitals without searching him elsewhere, according to an investigation by the CCRB that was obtained by ProPublica. Police then cited the man for littering. Now, you know, a lot of these takes aren't always, when you're stopping people, and we've seen that in the case of Eric Dim, especially with the CCRB, when you're stopping people, people are going to complain. Mm-hmm. They're going to perceive things as differently. They potentially might even be lying. So there's always three sides to the story: your side, their side, and the truth. So I don't know. I don't know how much I believe the squeezing of the genitals, to be honest with you. But what do you guys think about that so far?
I think the video he's talking about, because it was video of it, that was egregiously horrendous. But this one with the genitals, there's no, I don't know. I mean, anything could be said. As you know, in CCRB, they're crying about crazy things because they want to play the victim card. So I don't know. Everything CCRB does, not everything's on the up and up. But when it came to that other guy with the stomping on the head, yeah, I mean, that guy should have been terminated. Forget about modified, suspended, and facing charges and termination. But instead, he got rewarded. But the interesting part was it said that Kaz Daughtry overrode the lawyers. And we'll go back, and when you hear Eric Adams speak, he says, I can only do what corporation counsel tells me. I have to follow the lawyer's advice. But then you know that he's the one that authorized them to represent all his cronies in sexual assault and harassment cases, including himself, that being illegal. And then when he ordered them to sue the Trump administration for the $80 million that they took away from them for FEMA and all that other stuff in regards to migrant shelters. So in one instance, he says, I follow them. The other instance, he tells them what to do. And here you got Kaz Daughtry starting to do the same thing. I think Kaz Daughtry is the heir apparent. I don't know if he has a connection to Eric's mentor, Herb Daughtry, but it's very apparent that he's laid that groundwork down for this kid who clearly is a man-child and has no business being any executive, let alone a deputy mayor. That is the scariest thing in New York City right now. And by the way, Mike Smith actually answered my question in the chat when he said, when I asked him, did the mayor ever go in any activity with him out in the street? By the way, Mike arrested Eric Adams' cousin, as he says in the chat, and Eric Adams didn't show up for that. But so he said the answer was never. The mayor never went out with his team.
Yeah. This is the dangers of quickly promoting young guys who are inexperienced there, you know? This Kaz in that position, yeah, and by the way, this is why Adams loves Kaz, again, because Kaz was never a supervisor. If Kaz was a supervisor, he would have acted in a more measured way, in a more measured response to a lot of like what he said and what he's done. Like later on in the article, it mentions about a pursuit that Kaz was involved in. Now, this is something that more than likely he would have never done had he been a supervisor himself. Because, like I said, the supervisor, your job is to make sure your guys don't cross the line. You're Pat Riley, and your guys are Magic Johnson on the court. Okay, so something that I'm wondering right now is whether Kaz's initial promotion to assistant commissioner was because of that incident that's mentioned later on. If maybe there was so much pushback from the senior executives in 1PP that Adams just straight up said, you know what, we need to get around this. And the way to get around this is to promote Kaz from first grade detective to assistant commissioner.
Well, I mean, I think it's a lot of things. I mean, think about this kid. He's running around with a detective shield, and think about the captain of that unit and the lieutenants and the sergeants, that they know that they're not the boss. They're on the hook for everything that this idiot tells them, and he doesn't know anything. He doesn't know the law. He doesn't know the procedure. Like, think about that, dude. They had to promote him because people were like, it would have hit the media sooner. There would have been a lot more fallout from the thing. But like, that's why I ultimately say that like that captain, those lieutenants, they're cowards. I'm like, I'm sorry. Listen, I could take advice from somebody. I'm not taking advice from someone that does not know what they're talking about, doesn't follow the law, and doesn't follow the procedures. And that's basically what Kaz does. Right now he's a fire expert. Watch the videos from the fire the other day. Now that he's deputy mayor of public safety, he's leading the fire department now. That's good. That's going to work out well too for the fire department. I'm glad that I wait till there's things that are going to come out about him. But I just want to read Ron Layson's comment. Ron Layson says Pontillo was the chief of risk management. His job was to ensure compliance to protect the NYPD and New York City from this precise type of policing. He was fired for doing his job. 100%. And that's exactly what happened. To a T. That's exactly what happened. So here's what Pontillo says. When you put your thumb on the scale, it tips the culture. And that starts with the mayor. Adams declined to be interviewed for the story. A mayoral spokesperson provided a statement that said in part, while there is no one-size-fits-all approach to public safety, and we are always happy to improve operations, CRT has been an important addition to the NYPD's mission to ensure community members are both safe and feel safe. Wow, that's like right out of Tish's mouth, huh? She or out of her speech that was pre-written for her. She added that the mayor has always instructed the team to follow the guidance of department lawyers. Wow, and that's right. The mayor tells us to follow the law. He tells us to follow the law, even though he himself does not follow the law. Propublica interviewed more than a dozen former and current members of the NYPD, reviewed internal department records, and watched video footage of several police encounters. As Adams faces calls to resign over federal corruption charges, our reporting provides a new window into how the mayor has yielded power and whom he's entrusted to carry out his vision for public safety. Among them are Daughtry and Shell, longtime leaders of the CRT. The two are allies of the mayor and were photographed with him in a group lunch in Washington in January around President Trump's inauguration. An NYPD spokesperson said they were there as part of a contingent that was there to assist with security efforts. Within law enforcement circles, Shell and Daughtry have long stirred controversy. Shell shot a man in the back in 2008, killing him. He was not criminally charged and has denied any wrongdoing. Shell said he fired by accident, but a jury in a civil suit determined the shooting was intentional. He now holds the NYPD's top uniform position where he oversees a wide swath of the department. Shell did not respond to requests for comment. Daughtry has been found by the CCRB to have repeatedly engaged in misconduct, including pointing a gun and threatening to kill a motorcyclist. Adams recently chose him to be the deputy mayor of public safety, a role that will likely place him at the center of the city's response to Trump's administration immigration crackdown. So overall, half a dozen officers assigned have been engaged in misconduct. What do you guys think about that, Sal? Anything that jumps off the page at you?
I know that there's a lot of the misconduct cases, but the thing is if they do have misconduct cases and are found, we don't know if they're found guilty or whatever those cases lead to. How do they stick around in a unit? Because usually, if you get in trouble, right, they try to take you out of there, saying, "All right, well, you need to calm down because you have too many." Misconduct cases, stuff like that. I remember 3 incidents in a short span would probably get you back on patrol. And then within the next 6, those incidents have to go away. I think it's like 6-7 months. Once it's after that, then it can bring you back. So if that's true, then I don't know how they stick around in those units. But the fact that Kaz Daughtry's he was in charge of this immigration thing, there is no immigration enforcement by the police department. Again, these guys are focused on the wrong issues. He brought up Trump again. Trump has nothing to do with Kaz Daughtry and John Shell and Eric Adams running the police department with CRT. That's just a red herring for themselves. They love talking about Trump. But if he was in charge of something like that, that's scary because that guy doesn't know what he's doing. And if he's running around now with the fire department and stuff, that's gonna be a whole train wreck. And it's funny that even Tish or whatever commented on it with the same prepared speech they always give. I mean, this is let's be honest. I mean, I'm going to just say this is a shit show. They're running it like, I don't know how much longer. I think CRT is going to become the Q team now, but they have to actually handle their business. This stuff that happened, you can't just act like it never did because there's going to be a lot of pending litigation. And from what I'm reading, Eric Adams is directly involved. So everyone out there that has a future lawsuit in mind and you have been harassed or whatever, anything could have happened with the COT, especially if these clowns are on the scene. Just remember to add Eric Adams' name, because using this as your background, you know that he's directly involved in the majority of decisions here that happen with Kaz and Shell.
Yeah. Something I'm thinking about is what do you think is the real? I mean, like what was the objective of CRT? Because during when Bratton came back, he pushed us into more precision policing, right? And this is when they expanded the FIO program. So for those of you who don't know, the FIO is in the NYPD. That's the Field Intelligence Office. And back in the old days, it was just a sergeant and his assistant, a cop, right? But the department found they were so effective that they expanded the program to include to make it a team. So that sergeant would go from just relying on bodies that he may borrow for the day from other units, like other special teams, to having his own dedicated squad of guys. And to my knowledge, the FIO program was bringing in lots of guns and doing a great job of it too. And so I'm bringing this up because, like, I'm kind of confused because the program was doing so well, and here Adams comes in and they create CRT, and now what's happening is Tish is shrinking the FIO program again. So now a lot of these guys, these sergeants, are going back to having one or two, or if they're really blessed, 3 guys. So I'm like, well, what was the objective here? Because if the department, the FIO program was bringing in lots of guns, and if the department thinks that wasn't effective enough, and hence we have CRT, then my thing is, did that work too? Because now you're busy shrinking the FIO program and you're getting rid of CRT. The point I'm trying to make here is that the department, what the department should be doing is looking at the handcuffing of cops via rules like the diaphragm law and bail reform, so that every cop could be more of a cop, and you won't have to rely on specialized, like individualized, specialized units, And in Adams' case, I think he realized himself that that the police were handicapped, and that he needed his own special team of cops within the department to actually clamp down on a lot of the issues in the city that were getting out of hand. So the point I'm trying to make here is, you need to target the city, and these officials need to target what's handicapping the department, instead of creating specialized teams like the Q teams or CRT or whatever else they're going to call their next police department within the police department, because those aren't going to work. And in fact, from what's happened here, you're going to see that it's only going to be staffed with inexperienced young guys that are going to get themselves in trouble. And if this mayor is still there, they're definitely gonna run amok again.
So in my opinion, and when you gotta go back to when Eric Adams steps in, right? Crime skyrocketing, right? He comes in post George Floyd. Bill de Blasio no longer hides that he's a full-blown communist and he wants a color revolution in New York City, right? Like, he no longer hides it. He goes out, he tells you, we're here to redistribute wealth. Like, that's it. We're here to, he starts telling you all this stuff, how much he hates the police. It's like he's keeping you locked down in your home, but welcoming people to go out on New York City streets and riot. So Eric Adams steps in, crime's through the roof. He continues down Bill de Blasio's tyrannical communist mandates. Crime is skyrocketing. And now you have a bunch of people with integral knowledge of how the police department and politics in New York City works, who go out online and start taking it to Eric Adams and go out in the mainstream media and start actually telling the truth. right? And so one of the things that was consistently being brought up was the fact that after we pulled down Stop, Question, and Frisk, and after we disbanded anti-crime, there was no more omnipresence in New York City. And for those of you that aren't cops, what omnipresence is you're driving in your car. You're going to pick up your phone, but you're afraid because you think the cops are going to be there and they're going to stop you. You're about to commit a crime, but you think, hey, you know what? Maybe there's somebody watching me in an unmarked car and they're going to jump out and arrest me, right? And so omnipresence in the police department for the last 20 years prior to, I would say 2018, we started like the tracking in New York City. But from like, you figure early 2000, or you could even go 1998 all the way up to about 2018, omnipresence was very strong in New York City. The police department, the NYPD's omnipresence in New York City was there, right? You felt, criminals felt it, right? That's why criminals, they didn't carry guns unless they were going to shoot someone or to protect themselves during a transaction, because they felt that they could be stopped at any moment. And that was in large part because of anti-crime, but it was really in large part is that the overall mission of the New York City Police Department was a proactive department. The young kids on patrol wanted to get to anti-crime, or wanted to be field intelligence officers, or wanted to go to narcotics, or wanted to go to the gang unit. And there was a lot of proactive policing. Proactive policing was the norm. It wasn't the exception. So what, and I was pointed this out a lot for the first year, is there's no more omnipresence. Nobody's afraid. Carry gun, beat people, rob people. No one's even afraid of the cops. And so what they did is, and John Shell told you what CRT was, we're going to compete for the narrative. We're going to control the narrative. He went from we're going to compete for the narrative to we're going to control the narrative. So what they did is they couldn't fully get back omnipresence in New York City. And they knew that because crime's through the roof, and the rules that they adopted and the rules they signed on to don't really, you just can't do it. You just can't do that style of policing anymore. So what they decided to do is we're going to create this unit that flouts the rules, but we're going to paste them all over social media. We're going to place them all over the media, and they're going to stand out because they're going to have these khaki pants. So everyone's, when they're around, they're going to notice them, right? And then we're going to highlight what they've done. We're not going to talk about how they did it. We're just going to highlight the work that they've done, the amount of arrests, the amount of guns. We're not going to talk about the prosecution or the lack thereof prosecution, or the lack of them being able to actually bring forth a credible case that could possibly get prosecuted. We're not going to talk about any of that. We're just going to highlight them to show that there still is some type of omnipresence. And we're going to try to build this omnipresence, not through actually the streets, where the real omnipresence in the NYPD was garnered, right? Because the streets are talking, streets are watching, streets are always talking, the streets are always watching. So, and what you saw is them trying to build this unit up to build this form of omnipresence. And it failed miserably because what did you see online? Nobody respected them either, right? Nobody respected them either. And so like, that's what, to me, in my opinion, that's what the CRT was. It was a portion of their propaganda machine that, in fact, Eric Adams is a public safety mayor, because he was failed. I mean, he not only was he failing miserably, but he has failed in his core campaign promise to restore public safety in New York City. So that's what they were, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a great point, John. Great point. Yeah. My whole question was were they PR or were they a reaction to the handicapping of the department in general? But you made a great point, and I think that speaks to the in a way the rudderlessness of the department, because in a lot of ways the CRT is even less effective than the FIO program. It's not as effective.
It's not effective at all.
No.
They're just like the car pursuits, dude. They're just like the car pursuits. Were the car pursuits effective? Who went to jail? Nobody. Did it lower crime? Nobody.
Yeah.
Right? And, like, they weren't. Effective is not what they're looking for. They're looking to garner attention. That's all it is. It's you call it all the time, perception management.
Yep.
They're not effective. Obviously, the FIO program is highly effective, but you didn't see the FIOs gathering around one gun like taking photos of themselves like a bunch of idiots. No, you didn't see that, right? I was at FIO. You were at FIO. No, what did we do? We worked in secret. You didn't even know who the hell we were. We show up in the cell when you got arrested, or we arrested you, and we debriefed you. And we did our job, and it wasn't all over the media, and it wasn't all over Twitter, and we didn't talk about it, and you didn't see us. And then we it was never about being effective. It was never about that. Obviously, the FIOs are more effective. Yeah. You know, I mean, everything they're doing is perception management. Look, they kick all these cops out of the boroughs, right? All these cops. Who do you notify when there's a problem going on in the borough? You're a sergeant in whatever command. You're going to notify your borough. Hey, I got this going on. Hey, I got that going on. You're notifying your borough. You're notifying operations. Now, they kick the cops out of the boroughs. That gets the wheels spinning for things you need, right? And they're like, oh, we're putting all these cops back on patrol, right? And you're like, why would you get rid of those guys, though? Like, those are guys like you need. You kind of need people. You need people that make the wheels spin. You need people that get to the contacts. And you're like, why would you put those guys out? But then when you look at the unit they keep, the sanitation liaison, are you kidding me? Why do we have a sanitation liaison unit in the NYPD, Jessica Tish? Could you tell me why there's a first grade detective and sanitation liaison that, by the way, you promoted to first grade detective? Why is that one portion of what someone in the borough could do? Give the detail roster to the borough. We need you to notify sanitation. Okay, we don't need a liaison. You don't need a unit for that. You need someone. You do need a liaison, but you could have that at the borough level. And by the way, that person does 1,500 other jobs, and they notify 1,500 other organizations, and they help you, their support at top to help the ground troops. But meanwhile, how much more effective was the borough at handling things you need than the sanitation liaison? Yet we're rewarding the sanitation liaison, and we're throwing all the borough out. So that this whole administration has nothing to do with being effective. This whole administration is incompetent, and what they're doing is exactly what you highlighted, Marlon. It's perception management. It's controlling the narrative or competing for the narrative. And that's why you see mainstream media, they've captured.
What's the point of that when we have operations, too? And there's also, I believe, a parks department liaison, too, now. So what's the point of all of that when we have, isn't that the point of what we have the operations center for? I mean,
because listen, you guys, like, Marlon, you're not Italian, so you don't know. Like, you don't know what the point. I'm going to tell you what the point of that is, right? It's no show jobs for your friends. That's the point of it. You get your idiot nephew, you make them a test, or your idiot niece, make them get a test, and you give them a job that they do absolutely nothing in. You're like, yeah, don't worry about it, and you don't even got to show up to work. That's what Eric Adams' administration has done. It's perception management and the return of no-show jobs. These units are being created as payback to give their idiot nephews and the village idiot and whoever they owe a favor to, take care of their kids. That's all it is. You know, that's all this is. That's what it is. These are no-show jobs. This is the return. Instead of the mafia doing it, it's Eric Adams doing it. That's all it is.
But they are like the mafia. That's the problem. That's like I tell you, just like the buffoons hanging out up there in the Bronx. You either are a gangster but need to throw the badge in the toilet, or you can't be involved with those people and you keep the badge on your shirt. It's one or the other. If you go to try to do both, you're going to end up like Eric, like all these other guys. They're all in investigations. There's concurrent investigations ongoing because you can't have it both ways. You could only do one. So this is the ramifications of what you're saying is the finished product is what's happening now. And I understand what he's done, and he's stupid. No, it basically is a no-show job. But the whole perception management, it goes into this whole self-impressed thing where they would come out and show all these guns, right? But meanwhile, Marlon's right. The FIO would do this. Actually, the FIO would get the guns and make the arrests on the people that were either carrying these guns or they were either involved in selling guns. Now you're not getting that. Oh, we have all these guns. That's telling me there's a lot of crime. There's not any arrests, but you're taking weapons that they just tell you, yeah, here's 4 guns. I remember they had the gun. Remember you come to the precinct They would trade the guns in to get paid. There was that. I don't know if that program is what Eric Adams is showing with all these guns. They confiscated 6,000 guns off the street, but you're not making any arrests. So no one's held accountable for this stuff. And it's the same thing over and over again with them. Again, it's perception management. And John Shell's been saying it forever. We want to control the narrative. I've heard him say that on, when he was doing interviews. He said that over and over again. And that's exactly what they're doing. And CRT is his big baby because that's the only reason he made it to chief of patrol and then chief of department. CRT was created once again to give this guy a meaning on the job because they couldn't give him anything else. And this is the end result. And it all leads to this stuff. It's all perception management and it's all controlling the narrative. That's all it is. Control the narrative for perception management.
I agree. Shout out to Tom Joyce. Great discussion today, gents. The squad is headed out to it on a suspicious DOA. Best to all, prayers and strength to Eric and the Dims. Tom, have a great weekend, brother. Talk to you soon, bro. Yeah. All right, let's finish up on this article. We had a bunch of shit today. I don't think we're getting into any of it. I think we're going to stay on the Khaki Pants Cowboys. But we're about an hour 30 in. There's about 800-something people on here. If you guys could just do us a favor, like, share, subscribe. We're talking about the CRT team Propublica article that came out. So we will avoid the mistakes of the past. That was a common phrase used by Eric Adams when he said he was going to bring back anti-crime, which he never did. Instead, he brought back a couple of, borough crime units more than anti-crime. And I'll be the first to say that recent anti-crime was way more effective than borough crime. And so just want to put that out there.
Mm-hmm.
Adams has not always embraced aggressive police units. About 25 years ago, he launched a campaign to shutter one after its officers fired 41 shots at an unarmed man named Amadou Diallo. The killing was just the latest in a long trail of violence and abuse by the so-called street crime units. Its motto, "We own the night." At the time, Adams, a 38-year-old NYPD lieutenant and a leader of a group of black officers that spoke out against police brutality, known as 100 Black Officers in Law Enforcement Who Care, which in that organization directly, if you go to the first page of the patrol guide, it basically says it violates it, because you're not allowed to belong to any organizations that promote race. But yet, there you go. So, whatever. Anyway, to bring attention to the abuses, Adams orchestrated city council testimony by a disguised officer who had been in the unit. He sat next to the officer as she laid out a pattern of rampant racism. The NYPD fired the officer an hour after her testimony, but Adams kept up his campaign, and the unit was eventually closed. So what happens to Eric Adams, right? It starts early on, right? 38-year lieutenant. What does he do? He leads you for his own political reasoning. And what happened? There's the officer in the middle with the hood over the head. What happened to that officer? Terminated, right? Follow Eric Adams. What happened to Eric Adams? He bolsters his own name. He goes up. There he is with his mission, right? You see the mission in his eyes. I'm going to be the mayor one day. You see it. In the years that followed, Adams continued to push for change. He gave key testimony in a historic lawsuit that challenged the use of a tactic known as stop and frisk, where officers were stopping, questioning, and frisking residents without reasonable suspicion. After the murder of George Floyd in 2020, Adams spoke powerfully about how police leadership needs to step up. We have to create a culture of zero tolerance, Adams said. That accountability really starts at the top. But Adams had a different focus when he ran for mayor a year later. Amid concern over rising crime, Adams positioned himself as a former officer who would keep New Yorkers safe. One of his main proposals was to take guns off the street by bringing back a refashioned street crime unit. We should not throw out the baby with the bathwater, Adams said. We can do it right. So there you go. Eric Adams rallying his entire career, his entire political career, his entire police career against proactive policing, which is the basis and the foundation of public safety in New York City, which turns New York City to the safest big city in the world. So when we went away for it, obviously, crime rose. And so now he's going to be the savior to come in, and he's going to bring back proactive policing, but he's going to do it right. And now here we are 3 years later, and the unit that he created and fashioned to do it is acting with impunity and acting way worse than anti-crime ever did.
This guy's like, you could see even as he was a cop, he's for and against everything. He's never, Eric Dim coined it. He said he's for and against everything. There's never like a direct thing where he says, no, it's always for and against everything. And this whole thing, you know, this when he put these guys out there, again, he made this like, I'm going to be I'm going to take the streets back and all this stuff. Let's be honest, John. This is all, again, the way things are going, it's all politically created. I think you said this numerous times before. The fact that all these years prior, especially before the communists Bill de Blasio, that it was much safer, that crime was really at a record low at that time, right? And then they politically created the crimes that occurred later on. They changed legislation. They make it very hard. Discovery laws, bail reform. They politically created the problem that you have, because you could simply have kept it the way it was, and you could reform certain things, but not completely radically change something to fit the agenda on the left side of the ledger. Sometimes now, you know, with someone in D.C., you're going to have things that are going to be slanted in the right side of the ledger. So you just want to be in the middle, especially with public safety. Don't favor either side. Just stay in the middle. But they radically change it. So the fact that all of those factors come in before this idiot gets in, because they politically created what they have. Crime was not up until de Blasio got there. And they started changing all these rules to, I don't know, I don't really know what that's about. Is it a communist utopia that they want to create? But this guy, he actually made things worse, if that's even humanly possible. And he jeopardized the careers, and some that are no longer there. He jeopardized careers and ruined careers by using the police department in the manner that he's doing. Because CRT, if he just would have brought back the crime teams that existed in the precincts that worked with the FIOs, I'm not even saying the SNU team, which was, I'm saying crime. You would be all right. You just have each, and I think you were right. The borough crime team, I think it was the precinct crime teams, everything worked. He brought this thing in, and there's nothing but litigation, misconduct cases. This has been a disaster, CRT. I don't know. I'm sorry if you're in that unit, but you're being misled, man. You got clowns on top. They're making their bones off of you. They're stepping on your gravestone. They actually created it for you. And then they're going to walk away and act like, I didn't tell you to do that. I'm telling you this, and I'm reading this article and getting even angrier the more you read it, because I could already see so many cops. They've been already transferred. They've been disciplined. And these guys, the beat keeps going. And who's taking all the kudos, acting like this is the greatest thing on earth? Kaz Dawdry, who's the most unqualified human being right now in the administration. Used to be other people. They're no longer there. He's the most unqualified person for anything in the entire administration. And he's ruined it. He's ruined so many careers. This is unbelievable. And yet Eric Adams is liable in a lot of litigation coming up as far as CRT, just reading this.
Yeah, it's you know what it is? It's Munchausen syndrome, because they and this must be Munchausen syndrome is like, at this point, it's like part of Democrat policy, because a lot of the problems in the city and the state at large are because of they're created by these progressive policies. It's the same progressive Eric Adams who helped handicap the department, and now Mayor Adams is so arrogant and so full of himself that he thinks that he can still govern effectively New York City while still under these restraints that he helped put in place in the first place. But as Eric Adams is also a corporatist and a technocrat, So I think these two things kind of feed off of each other, because you see, as a progressive, they help handicap the department through bureaucracy and through these nonsense laws that kind of it kind of penalizes being proactive as a cop. And now, as mayor, technocrat and corporatist Eric Adams hopes to use AI and all these technologies to come in and help kind of help fill those gaps that are created by his exact policies that he pushed as a progressive. It's really bizarre, It's really bizarre. I look at the state of New York City and the state of New York State, and I think anytime these politicians, anytime they propose a solution, years from now, we're going to be living in the problems that come from their same solutions. You look at the way businesses are leaving. You look at businesses are leaving, and like as I said many times before, commercial real estate is in trouble in the city. So their solution is to fill it make it become a migrant shelter, and now use taxpayer dollars to help support that. And now you got budget problems because of that, So it's like every solution that's proposed by them is going to create another layer of problems. And being the corporatists that they are, and in this case Eric Adams is, that they're dragging us further down the road to using to create that giant surveillance state and technocratic state to help fix it. It's really bizarre.
Gnome Sane says, do you think the NYPD in the last decade began to rely too heavily on technology surveillance rather than physical presence, which led to the current omnipresence issue? Can there be a better balance? So I'm just going to give you my opinion on it. I don't think so. I think that the reliance on surveillance technology and all type of technology is due to the fact that they're literally trying to fundamentally change policing across the country. New York City is basically the pilot program for that, is why they're looking to push out good, moral, proactive police officers, people who follow the United States Constitution, who have a morality, who believe in God, who believe in a higher power, who will not follow the mandates and illegal edicts of mayors or their political ramifications. So I think the technology listens to those people and are less problems. So I think it's actually the reverse.